Finland, a land of forests, lakes, brutal winters, and long isolation. For centuries, the Finnish people seemed different from the rest of Europe. Different language, different myths, different genetics. And that raised a huge question. Where do the Finns actually come from? Are they simply another Northern European population, closely related to Scandinavians and Germans? Or are they the descendants of ancient Siberian migrants who entered Europe from the East? Historians debated it. Linguists argued over it. Entire theories of Finnish identity were built around it. But now, ancient DNA is finally giving us real answers. And what scientists discovered is far more complicated and far more surprising than anyone expected. Because the Finnish genetic story doesn't follow the normal European pattern at all. In this video, we're going to trace the ancient origins of the Finnish people. From Ice Age hunter-gatherers living at the edge of the Arctic, through mysterious eastern migrations from Siberia, to the strange genetic isolation that shaped modern Finland. And along the way, we'll uncover why Finland may have one of the most unique genetic profiles anywhere in Europe. Today, Finland is home to around 5 million people. Most live in the southern part of the country, especially around Helsinki, Tampere, and Turku. But Finland itself stretches far north into the Arctic Circle, bordering Sweden, Norway, and Russia. And geography is everything here. Finland sits at the crossroads between Scandinavia and Eurasia. To the west lies the Nordic world. To the east, the vast forests and plains leading deep into Russia and Siberia. That's not incidental. It's the reason Finnish DNA became so unusual in the first place. For thousands of years, dense forests, freezing winters, lakes, and difficult terrain kept populations relatively isolated. Villages stayed small. Communities mixed less frequently than in much of mainland Europe. And over time, that isolation amplified rare genetic traits that became unusually common in Finland. Here's what's interesting. Finland has become incredibly important to genetic research itself. Scientists even use the term Finnish disease heritage to describe a group of rare inherited disorders found at much higher rates among Finns than elsewhere in Europe. That happened because of population bottlenecks, periods when small, isolated communities passed the same genes down again and again over generations. And then there are the physical traits people often associate with Finns. Light hair, pale eyes, exceptional endurance in cold climates. But here's the thing. The science behind those traits is much older and much more layered than people usually assume. Language gives us another clue. Finnish belongs to the Uralic language family, not the Indo-European family spoken across most of Europe. That makes Finland immediately unusual. English, German, French, Russian, Greek, Hindi, all of those languages ultimately trace back to Indo-European roots. Finnish doesn't. Instead, Finnish is related to Estonian and distantly connected to languages spoken far to the east, including some languages of Siberia. That's one reason earlier scholars sometimes proposed dramatic theories about the Finns arriving from Asia relatively recently. And this is where it gets surprising. Some Finnish words still show ancient connections to Uralic-speaking populations spread across northern Eurasia, thousands of kilometers away. Language alone couldn't prove migration, but it hinted at something deeper. But before we get to the DNA, we need to go back much further, to the people who were here first. At the end of the last ice age, much of Finland sat buried beneath enormous glaciers. Humans couldn't permanently settle the region until the ice finally retreated around 11 several years ago. Then the first hunter-gatherers arrived. These early settlers probably moved north from multiple directions. Some came from southern Europe through the Baltic region. Others likely traveled westward from areas connected to ancient northeastern Europe and Russia. Ancient DNA from sites across Scandinavia and the eastern Baltic reveals something remarkable. These early northern hunter-gatherers were already genetically mixed. Some carried ancestry linked to Western European hunter-gatherers. Others carried ancestry connected to eastern populations closer to Siberia. Physically, they may have looked surprising to modern eyes. Genetic studies of Mesolithic Europeans suggest some northern hunter-gatherers likely had darker skin combined with lighter eye colors, including blue eyes. That combination sounds unusual today, but it appears repeatedly in ancient European DNA. For thousands of years, these hunting and fishing communities survived in harsh northern conditions. They adapted to forests, rivers, icy coastlines, and long winters. Then came the next wave. Around 6,000 to 4,000 years ago, Neolithic farmers spread across Europe from Anatolia in what is now modern Turkey. They brought agriculture, livestock, pottery, and dramatically different genetics. In much of Europe, these farmers transformed the continent. But Finland remained partly outside that process. Agriculture reached Finland later and more unevenly than elsewhere in Europe because the northern climate made farming difficult. And that meant ancient hunter-gatherer ancestry survived far longer there than in places farther south. Archaeological cultures like the comb ceramic culture preserved many older lifeways even while interacting with neighboring farming societies. Finland became a layered population where ancient forager ancestry remained unusually strong. Then came another massive shift. Around 5,000 years ago, Bronze Age steppe herders associated with the Yamnaya horizon expanded across Europe from the Pontic-Caspian steppe north of the Black Sea. These migrants spread Indo-European languages and carried distinctive Y chromosome lineages, especially haplogroup R1a. Much of Europe changed dramatically after their arrival, but Finland again followed a different path. The Finns do carry steppe ancestry. Modern Finnish populations contain a substantial Bronze Age steppe component, often estimated around half or slightly less depending on the region. But they also preserve unusually high levels of ancient northeastern Eurasian ancestry compared to nearly every other European population. And that's the key mystery. Ancient DNA from the Levenluta burial site in western Finland revealed individuals with clear Siberian-related ancestry more than 1,000 years ago. Researchers from the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History and other institutions found that this Eastern genetic signal likely entered the Baltic and Finnish region long after the first Ice Age settlers arrived. In other words, Finland became a true genetic mosaic, a layered population shaped by Western hunter-gatherers, Eastern Eurasian migrants, limited Neolithic farming ancestry, and Bronze Age steppe expansions all mixing together across thousands of years. Then history added even more complexity. For centuries, Finland existed between powerful rivals. Sweden dominated Finland politically for hundreds of years. Russia later conquered it in the early 1800s. Wars swept repeatedly across the region. Borders shifted constantly. The history books often implied these outside powers reshaped Finland completely. But when scientists looked at the DNA, they found something different. Modern Finns still preserve a remarkably distinct genetic profile compared to neighboring Scandinavians. Despite centuries of Swedish rule, Finnish populations remained genetically separate in many regions. Researchers from the University of Helsinki and several international genome projects found clear east-west genetic divisions inside Finland itself. Western Finns generally show more Scandinavian-related ancestry. Eastern Finns preserve stronger signals connected to ancient northeastern Eurasian ancestry. And this is where it gets even more surprising. One of the biggest genetic bottlenecks in Finnish history happened relatively recently. During the 16th century, internal migrations pushed small groups into remote eastern and northern regions. Those isolated communities expanded rapidly from tiny founding populations. That isolation amplified rare genes dramatically. Scientists studying the Finnish disease heritage discovered dozens of inherited disorders became unusually concentrated because entire regions descended from relatively small numbers of settlers. It's one of the clearest examples in Europe of how isolation shapes human genetics. Then there's the Sami connection. The indigenous Sami people of northern Scandinavia carry even stronger Siberian-related ancestry than most Finns.